Morning, Iain. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining this pay-app session, Surviving to Thriving. You're Chief Executive of FIS. Would you mind just giving me a bit of a background into the FIS?
Sure. FIS, we're the trade association, finishes and interiors sector. We're the trade association for the fit-out and finishing sector in the UK. We're a supply chain organisation, so manufacturers through main contractors to specialist subcontractors. And we focus on improving quality in the marketplace and helping businesses within the marketplace effectively to make money. We're not for profit, so I often think the best way to describe us is like a cooperative. Everybody puts some money in the middle and we try and find a way to work better together.
The last 2 years have had a profound effect on the country, especially for construction. Just from your experience, what do you think the key to survival is? I mean, business is always about risk, right? So the key to survival is understanding and managing your risks. So it's about being informed. I think one of the things we found most challenging, particularly when we look at the pandemic, is the sheer weight of information that was available and also the amount of misinformation that's available. So it's, I think one of the keys to surviving and thriving is ensuring that you have access to good, authoritative and informed information and ways to validate that. I think the other thing is resilience. I don't think we fully understand the weight of the past couple of years and the impact it's had on people. But that sort of resilience, people make how do I still make decisions in difficult times? How do I keep moving forward? So resilience is obviously important, particularly for business leaders. And I think knowing your limits. So I think one of the things that we've tried to help companies, particularly when we look not just at the pandemic, but some of the price increases and the inflation that we're seeing is understanding the impact of these and knowing what you're capable of and knowing potentially when you're overstretching yourself. Because construction particularly is an industry where it's very easy to overstretch. Yeah, and as a trade body that works with lots of different members, can you think about any examples where specific members have managed to adapt and thrive?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. It's hard to put out specific examples. I mean, I'm incredibly proud of our whole community. I think there's people I'd draw attention to. I mean, our president, Helen Tapper, throughout the pandemic was running her own business, yet she still found time to share information with us, which helped us to understand exactly how things were impacting companies in the marketplace. We are one step removed, so we rely on that information, that coalface information. So I think individuals like that stood out, and I think for me they gave me confidence in community and helped me understand, helped me understand how valuable a community like FIS can be and how valuable the communities around us are. I think construction was unique in the pandemic because we did carry on. So many businesses did grow through that period despite sort of some of the difficulties that they were facing. But I think also, I think if you look at thriving, it's not necessarily just about growth. I know some businesses that revisited what was important to them, and they've come out of the pandemic stronger but smaller because they've decided, I don't want to work for clients like that anymore. I don't want to put up with that anymore. I don't think I'm making money doing that anymore. And therefore they've retracted and looked at how they operate. So thriving, I think, means different things to different people. I think as a society sometimes we're obsessed with growth, but sometimes it can be about better, and often for business really it's about more profitable.
Where do you feel the key changes that the FIS had to make during this time especially, and what sort of impact do you think this had? Are there any changes that were made that are still in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always had a sort of a fairly hybrid model. We don't have to be particularly office-based as an organisation. We've always had a hub, but we've had, we're never going to pay the highest salaries at FIS. Therefore, we need to attract people by being flexible. So I guess that was a lesson we'd already learned. If we want the best technical people, it's not necessarily ideal to have them based in Solihull. Where we found that we've significantly improved as an organisation is understanding how to use some of this new technology like Zoom and Teams more effectively. I think going into 2020, we'd had one webinar and it had 40 people attending. Since the start of the pandemic, we've run, countless now, I've lost count, but it'll be well over 50, 60 webinars. We've had something like 8,000 people attending. I think now we're starting to understand the blend, and I think for us it's about, if we've got
one thing to talk about, and we need sort of quick and quick feedback, but not particularly in-depth feedback. We can do that really well online, but if we need to have a proper in-depth discussion, we know people need to see the whites of each other's eyes and do it face to face. So I think we're better understanding where digital works and where it doesn't, and looking at how we can manage and blend our team and work together better as a team and as a community.
Excellent. And on reflection of that, really, is there anything that you would do differently?
Yeah, hindsight and foresight, eh? Yeah, hindsight's a fabulous teacher, and I wish I had more foresight. I mean, I think, if we look at the last 2 years, the pandemic obviously is the thing that sort of immediately comes to mind because it changed and shaped all of our lives. But you look at what we've bumped into as we've come out of that, in terms of the rapid inflation that construction has faced. We've got the Grenfell inquiry that's having a huge impact, the building safety bills coming through, and it's having a huge impact on how we manage design liability through the supply chain at the moment, in wake of the new regulation. The construction has three main risks. It's got time risk, design risk and price risk. They've never been more intense, especially when you get to the specialist subcontractor level as they are at the moment. So we've seen design risk push through the supply chain because of insurance challenges. We've seen material inflation like we've never experienced before, double digit, triple digit in some cases. And we've seen, through the pandemic, the delays and the time impact on start dates. We've had Brexit. But Brexit's had an impact in terms of the availability of labour, particularly. And I wish I'd given more thought to all of this during the pandemic, because helping people to manage the price risk in construction particularly has been a real challenge. We don't have a contractual structure that's equipped to deal with this kind of inflation. That if we look at the sort of the JCT contracts, they have fluctuation clauses, but we don't really know as a sector how to use them effectively. We don't have the indices in place in order to support effective use of fluctuations. So I wish, if I could have that 2 years back again, I spent a little bit more time focusing on the problems as we came out of the pandemic, because I think, to be honest, I suspect we all kind of misjudged how much work there would be this side of the pandemic. I think we all saw a recession behind the pandemic. In actual fact, there's been a real wave of work coming through that's been caught up behind the pandemic, behind Brexit and things that were locked up. So I think now we're struggling to manage a growing pipeline with a dwindling resource in a high inflation market, with design risk still being punted around like a football rather than managed effectively by the supply chain.
Is there anything from a personal viewpoint that you could sort of offer up in terms of hints and tips that you could share with the industry?
I think it comes down to working out where your risks are. I mean, we produce at FIS a risk management toolkit. It's not perfect, but it gives people an example of how maybe to look through and sit down with their business, with their colleagues, and work out within the projects and within their business where the risks are. And I think getting them down on paper is really important. Having some kind of a system to monitor your risk and looking at what you would do, and having that plan B in place, or at least know where to go to if it hits the fan. And I think we get quite a lot of inquiries coming through to the FIS. The one we love is things like, I'm thinking of, I'm just about to. So if somebody's planning, they're thinking, or they're trying to validate what they're about to do, they're moving their business forward. The ones we're sort of less keen on is, oh my God, it's just happened, what the hell do I do next? And I think that's, it's much more difficult to deal with a crisis when you don't have a plan. And I think, risks catch us out. I remember talking to a company a few years ago who resigned their membership because we gave them too much to worry about. They'd stayed in membership, I hasten to add, after a conversation. They'd sort of joined, and then they were being confronted by sort of clear and present risks that they hadn't really thought about before, and found that overwhelming. That business is now a very successful one, and I believe they've got a better risk management process in place, or a better understanding of where their risks sit.
Good, yeah. Well, one of the things about PayApps is exactly on that, is about managing commercial risk, which is obviously quite extremely important for businesses to survive. And with that, revolutionising the approach to how payments are undertaken, Just on the topic of sort of going digital and ease of access to information and managing that risk, do you think that could help the construction industry as a whole moving forward?
I do, I really do. From the bottom of my heart I do, because I think we need more transparency. I think construction is an industry that's beset with trust issues and it's beset with conflict. We're far too adversarial as a supply chain, and I think we've sort of developed this culture of keeping our cards very close to our chest because we don't trust each other in the different elements of the supply chain, and quite frankly we don't behave sometimes to warrant that trust. You know, we talk a lot about late payment but fair payment. We know payment practice in construction and business. We know people obfuscate fact in order to avoid paying. We know there's all sorts of tricks that are played around using quality as a reason not to raise an invoice. I mean, we've done a lot of work with the Small Business Commissioner about late payment. Yeah, but late payment is actually when the invoice drops. But we'll do everything we can to make sure that invoice doesn't drop, you know, through the variations and putting procedure in place to actually make it more difficult for people to actually claim payment. So I think to have a more efficient process there is so important, because that conflict is a cancer at our core as an industry. We have to behave better and we have to respect the different tiers of the supply chain more effectively. I mean, I was reading over Christmas, dull as I am, I was reading the Reba Planner Works, just to remind me of how at the top of the industry, so you say at the very start of the project, how everybody thinks it happens. And there's a huge reality gap between what we think is happening in this sort of what's presented as a very linear process to the mess and the muddle that we get at the coalface of construction. And I think we have to find better ways to communicate, we have to find better ways to share information, and we have to find more structured ways to resolve disputes. I see tools like pay apps being a big part of that, because you know, technology in itself doesn't change culture, but it provides a catalyst for culture to change.
Absolutely, and you released the digital spine last year to aid understanding of language behind digital tools. Could you talk us through that a little bit, please?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take a step back actually, because the productivity is a huge issue in construction. Right? You know, we get programs wrong, we get designs wrong, and it costs us time. Talk about those three risks. It's the time risk. We're so focused on cost. So what's it going to cost? What's it going to cost? The procurement processes we adopt are all about driving down the price, driving down the price, driving down the price. And we talk about value engineering loads. We don't talk about the time engineering that goes on as well. So the accelerations and all of the stuff that throws us off, it throws us out. And if you think about our sector, the finishes and interior sector, we're right at the end of the programme quite often. Everything else has gone wrong. So already the time and the money are gone from the job and they're trying to play catch up. And a lot of that then happens through our packages. So I think that sort of, this productivity issue is huge. So then I roll back to the big issues we face at the moment. You know, we've got the price inflation, so waste of material is more significant than it's ever been in terms of the cost, the impact of it. You can't treat stuff like a commodity because it costs more. We've got the most profound labour shortages we've ever known. And sustainability, net zero, we understand that we have to do more as a sector. We know we've been too wasteful. So I look at those so the productivity to drive all of that. 17% of all dry lining is rework, right? So we're wasting 20% of our labour, 20% of our material, give or take, doing rework. So we have to be more efficient. Digital isn't something that's being done because it sounds good. It's because it is going to drive productivity into our supply chain. And I think, again, our role as an organisation is to try and make it simpler for people, make it more accessible. And when I look at the way that digital is presented to the construction sector, it's often somebody's got a solution that they're trying to impose on us. So, it's something like blockchain. I've got blockchain, I'm going to make that work in construction. Rather than looking at the problems we've got and working out how we apply the technology to those problems. So the point of our digital spine really is to provide really simple explanations as to what artificial intelligence actually is, and actually contextualise that to where it is now, currently, at this minute, working in construction. So it's still early days, and we're working with a technology partner now who's got more expertise in the actual technology than us.
to start to build the examples, the case studies, and we're running series of like workshop webinars every couple of months, focusing on a different aspect of it. So we've just done construction management software. Next up is point scan, laser scanning, and how we can generate information and how we can use that information more effectively in the construction process. So really, it's about translation and simplification, because we're being confronted with overwhelming information, often in acronym and language that we don't understand. The digital spine is really a simple explanation of what technology is and how it's applied in our sector.
And in cases where there is maybe resistance to adopt digital approaches, you think that's down to sort of lack understanding and how this works, instead of maybe resistance to change a process?
Yeah, weirdly, I don't believe construction is particularly resistant to change, because I think actually everything we've demonstrated from the past 2 years is what an incredibly flexible industry we are. Flexibility is at the core of what we do. And almost every job is different, right? So part of our problem is almost every job is different. So I think managing change is something that we do on a daily basis. So I'm not sure it is resistance to change. I think it's difficulty in investing, because construction is a very finite business. A lot of stuff is contained within the project. It's costed back to the project. Most of our work is procured on a one-hit basis. So how do you make something pay over 5 jobs? We've got thin veneer of business over a relatively deep well of project. So there is an investment problem. And there's a time problem attached to that as well. So how do I find the time to step out of the project? How do I find the money to step outside the projects to invest in something that's going to make my business better? I think that's where we have the biggest challenge. And then beyond that, I think again, there's so many solutions, and we've got so many moving parts in the construction sector. And you're supplying to you've got different customers, different clients that have got different systems. We've got different BIM environments, etc., etc. So it's kind of hard. We feel like you're watching the skipping rope go around, but it's kind of hard to work out where to jump in, because if you buy the Betamax and everyone else goes with the VHS, you've made a bad investment. And I think also some of the problem has been around training. So where people have invested, they haven't fully understood what they're investing in. The training hasn't been good enough, and therefore they've bought technology that they don't make the best use of, and then they get a little bit burnt by that and resistant to further investment. So I guess it's a combination of lots of things, but bad investment in the past, inability to invest outside of the project, and a lack of understanding about some of the values that these things bring.
Iain, I've enjoyed our chat today. Thanks so much for taking part.
No problem at all. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.